historian specialising in defiant women and LGBTQ history. And tonight I'm going to read a piece from my book about the birth of fashion, because the birth of fashion was very much the first time that we became individuals and saw ourselves as separate to the monarchy, as a toiler of the soil or a maker of goods. We saw ourselves as individuals. Since ancient times, clothing has represented a uniform of class and gender morality enforced by a rigid and extensive list of sumptuary laws. For centuries, those laws dictated the textiles, colours, silhouettes and accessories men and women were permitted to wear based on social rank and gender. Tens of thousands of fashion police roamed the streets of European towns and cities, assisted by networks of informants. Fashion police had the power to issue on-the-spot violent punishments and extortionate fines to enforce the sartorial precedence of social rank and gender-appropriate dressing, to make sure people didn't dress above their station or cross the bounds of cis-gender propriety. A fellow of King's College, this is a quote from an archive, was severely punished for wearing a taffeta doublet. Another gentleman was imprisoned for wearing a very monstrous and outrageous great pair of hose, while lawyers risked disbarment for wearing ruffs exceeding the precise measurements permissible for lawyers. For the hoi polloi, however, the sartorial restrictions were far more rigid and the punishments more severe. Fashion as a means of self-expression and a mark of individuality was the preserve of royalty and the aristocracy, denied to ordinary people who risked fines, floggings or imprisonment for wearing a colour, silhouette or textile beyond their station. Every morning, ordinary people woke up and put on the uniform of their class without any consideration for their true selves, denying the dreams of who they may aspire to be. Sumptuary laws became even more oppressive with the embrace of Calvinism in 1536. Calvinism directly linked luxury, beauty and pleasure to sin. Henceforth, inert objects as well as actions were afforded a moral value. A handcrafted pretty shoe of fine kidskin leather was not merely luxurious, it was sinful, ungodly, whilst an uncomfortable, ugly shoe was godly. One of the main purposes of Elizabeth's Sumptuary Laws of 1574 was focused on the prohibition of using clothing to express individuality, as well as clamping down on women dressing as men and men dressing as women. Queen Elizabeth I had always dreaded people of the inferior sort, as she referred to her subjects, dressing above their station. When she came to power in 1559, her first law was to reintroduce the Buggery Act her sister Queen Mary had abolished in 1553. She followed this with her apparel laws on the 15th of June 1574. She issued no less than 8 proclamations against cross-dressing and excess of apparel, forbidding cross-dressing and clothes that risked the feminization of men and the masculinization of women. Queen Elizabeth stated that cross-dressing was causing disorder and confusion of the degree of all sorts of states. Her proclamations against excess of apparel limited what even the higher social classes could and couldn't wear. She further ordered fashion laws, and the thousands of British fashion police came to an abrupt end in Britain and Ireland in June 1604, when our first openly gay monarch, King James I, completely abolished all sumptuary laws, liberating people of all classes to express their individuality in the way they dressed and expressed themselves. Within a year, ordinary people began viewing themselves not in terms of their jobs, but in terms of their dreams. Fashion was suddenly in the hands of every man and woman across Britain and Ireland, sparking a host of new celebrity eccentrics who cut a line of their own in their thinking, style of dress and lifestyle. It was this surge in flamboyant use of apparel to express oneself that prompted Shakespeare to add the line of "The apparel oft proclaimeth the man" in Hamlet in 1607. To his audience, it represented the double entendre, referring to how clothing was now a statement of character and individuality, but more importantly, a reference to the rising number of trans women able to assert their true gender since King James I's abolition of Sumptuary Laws. Puritans weren't at all pleased by the new freedoms, declaring these new fashionistas and cross-dressers, mocking them for their long hair, high heels and flamboyantly coloured attire, makeup and jewellery. In the prolific amounts of propaganda Puritans portrayed, caricatured trans and cis women wearing doublets and breeches, their long noses buried in books. Cross-dressing was a popular way of expressing individuality, as was flamboyance and individuality of dress. Nonetheless, between 1604 and 1640, the British and Irish enjoyed unfettered fashion freedoms that allowed them to dress however they chose, cocking a snoop at all those who would sneer. It would be 150 years before anywhere else in Europe enjoyed such freedoms. As for the rest of Europe, fashion police continued to roam the streets, oppressing ordinary people's ability to express themselves in the way they dress. British fashion has always carried the torch for an individual boldness and flair, and it is vital we keep this flame of individuality burning forevermore.